Hello and welcome to the Project Hope podcast for families and friends with a loved one in a group of high demand, high control. I am your host, Jennifer. A lot has changed since I first started this podcast, so I thought I'd add a little to the initial introductions and provide something that's more up to date. I work with survivors of coercive control one-to-one. I also consult with families, and I offer education to the public around such topics. For the full scope of what I offer and also my credentials, you're welcome to check out my website, jennifer-french.com. I have a master's in the psychology of coercive control, and as of August 2024, I've been accepted into a PhD program called Psychology, Policy, and Law, and I'll have a specialty in either criminal behavior or forensic victimology. This will support the work that I currently do as an expert witness in cases involving coercive control. The Project Hope podcast has provided such an amazing opportunity for me to meet many wonderful people, survivors, experts, family members, and it's truly a pleasure to meet each one of these individuals you will hear from. This podcast will conclude with season 2 as I enter into my PhD program, but I have many other exciting things on the horizon, so please stay in touch and go to my website for any and all current events. Thanks to all of you who listen to Project Hope and care about this community. Naomi Van Winkle was born into a religious group called King's Chapel in Connecticut, which was essentially a Christian cult. The group had a female leader who was based at their headquarters in England at Mansfield Woodhouse and dictated much of the community's ongoings as well as individual lives with the use of fear and high-pressure tactics to interrogate and manipulate. After many years, and as a part of her own healing journey of discovery and exploration, Naomi and others are telling their stories through a podcast series that Naomi created called Cult in Connecticut. In it, Naomi shares about her experience of being born and raised in this cult and the journey of healing from the pain and confusion she experienced growing up. The podcast stories shared are so well told and provide an intimate picture of a group less well known to the public. In my opinion, examples like these are so important as they are likely the most common types of examples of high demand, high control groups that people find themselves a part of. At 18, Naomi left the church and everything she had ever known to begin a new life. We discuss her process of leaving, healing, experiencing life, and much more. Naomi is also a Nashville creative artist and business owner. To listen to Cult in Connecticut, please go to the podcast notes, and to find out more about Naomi, you will see all of that information there. And we hope you enjoy. Welcome, Naomi Van Winkle. It is such a pleasure to have you on the Project Hope podcast with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So today, Naomi and I discussed just beginning with a little bit of an overview to kind of ground the audience into your experience with your Cult in Connecticut. Naomi does have a podcast by that name and has shared her story in the first episode. So I highly recommend listening to that. And all that information, of course, will be in the podcast notes. So without much further ado to that, Naomi.
I was born into this church group. It was located in Norwich, Connecticut, and it was called King's Chapel. And from the outside of this group, it appeared to be a normal Christian church. The children went to public schools and the adults had normal jobs in the community. And, we appeared healthy and normal. But as a child behind closed doors, I was expected with great pressure to be present and actively participate in every single church service and church related function, which was 5 to 6 nights during the week, plus all day and night on Sundays.
Oh,
I was expecting.
wow.
Yeah.
I didn't actually realize that. Actually, I know that almost everybody in the podcast does refer to that, how demanding it was, but I don't think at any point it specifically said that it's that schedule.
Yes. So the people in the group had school and jobs and everything like that, but they still were expected 100% with great pressure to be there. You had to be there afterwards at night, and then all day Sunday. The services on Sunday were in the morning and in the evening, and then there was youth group, and any youth group function, you had to attend it. You could not miss it.
Yeah.
So let's see. I was expected to agree with anything and everything that the adults and leaders had to say or that they taught me. I was expected to think and act right at all times. I had to go through proper channels when making any small or big decision in my life in order to find out the will of God. I was taught that the leaders could speak for God and knew his will. Each member of this group was under intense scrutiny. At any given moment, a member could be called out and interrogated for their sins, whether it be pride, lust, laziness, selfishness, resentment. The interrogations could last hours and even into the night, and they could also stretch into a series of interrogations that spanned over days, weeks, months, and even years, until the leaders deemed the member repented. As a young child, I lived in almost a constant state of panic. I was terrified of randomly being the target of an interrogation. I was all petrified of dying and going to hell or Jesus coming back. I was in survival mode, a constant state of prayer and repentance, just in case. Even on the toilet, I would be desperately praying for forgiveness. The punishment for sins were severe in this community, and it ranged from humiliation, exile, loss of property, including pets, loss of family and friends, and connection with people. Yeah. I learned how to live looking behind my shoulder, sleeping with one eye open, careful to say and do the right thing at all times that would not get me in trouble. I had big passions, a big personality, lots of big wild dreams, but I was strategically careful to suppress them so that they would not be interpreted as sin. I escaped the group when I was 18, and when I was old enough to apply for college behind my parents' back, I did that. And that's when I started my life completely over. When I got to college, I immediately joined a Christian group in the college, and I joined a new church. The people that I met during that time were so generous to me, providing a place for me to stay during school breaks because I had nowhere to go during school breaks. When the school let out all the kids, I would have nowhere to go. I moved to Nashville when I was 21. At that time, I basically experienced some toxic, abusive, romantic relationships. One was a physically abusive partner, and one partner abandoned me when I was 12 weeks pregnant. Wow. That was with my daughter. Yeah. But when I was pregnant with my daughter, something shifted for me. I began to get therapy. I joined a 12-step program. I was able to work through some of my pain, and it was for her. I wanted to be a good mom for her, so I chose to begin to heal. I met my now husband when my daughter was 5 years old. When I was pregnant with my son's 3, I found the courage and strength to face all of it, to go back and face every single thing. My childhood, my pain, my fears, all of it. I decided to look everything in the eye. I dove into what I would call the thick black mud head first, determined to reach the bottom. And I did. And that opened up a new world for me, a new life. My life.
Just, I have to pause you just there to go like, sure. That is the lotus metaphor, right? The flower that arises out of the mud. And it's like, I so feel that in what you just shared. Really cool.
I think when I was pregnant, both pregnancies, there was something that grew inside of me. I think that it was like this anger and, like we were talking about before, off the recording, where it's just one of those, I felt like a tiger or something. Like it was like really protective of my little tiger cubs that weren't born yet. And it just made me so angry about my own childhood, so that gave me the courage and the strength to do what I had to do because I wanted to be a good parent, the best parent that I could be. So I wanted to get help for myself and face some of these things, because I wanted to heal for them, and also the pregnancy itself. And it gave me the strength. There was some sort of newfound strength with both of my pregnancies. I don't know if it's just like the pregnancy thing itself with the hormones. It could be hormones or I don't know what it is. It just gave me the strength to really, it doesn't matter how much pain this is going to be, how painful this is going to be, how scary this is going to be. I will do whatever it takes to look at my demons in the eye and face everything. And I literally would visualize myself diving headfirst into thick black mud. I felt so much darkness and pain and fear, and just, it was really hard. I didn't know if I would ever really come out of it. I didn't know if I would ever really reach the bottom, or I didn't ever know if I would ever be able to, but I knew that I would do whatever it took to heal myself.
Yeah.
And that's when I started Colton, Connecticut, when I decided to share the story of this group, to shine a light on this group, and to face the truth of this group, that it wasn't just a normal Christian church.
Yeah.
And that it was time to face that and say it out loud and tell people and not hide. I've been a thriving person in society. I had a, marriage where, as I said before, I was married to somebody that was physically violent and emotionally abusive. And, I had another relationship as well where, as I said, I was abandoned when I was pregnant and had to go through the pregnancy and everything by myself. But from the outside looking in, I've always been a thriving person in society. Yeah. You wouldn't think that I'm this struggling person. I've always had a great career, and I've always, been very independent and everything. And just, it looks like I'm thriving, but, inside I was just always wondering what the heck was wrong with me. I was just always depressed. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I think that I realized when I was pregnant, especially with my son, what was wrong with me was that I wasn't facing the truth completely, 100%. And that I had to do that in order to be free.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think, and you and I spoke about this a little before, but I feel really grateful just the way in which you exposed that, because I think so many others can relate to that. And we had talked about kind of this dynamic that happens where when one gets out of an abusive environment, we kind of think, which makes sense, that we're going to be so happy and everything's going to be fine because now we're out. But that's so often not the case because there are all these lingering elements. And of course, your first gen is or second gen. So you're a born into that experience, which is truly different. I mean, from a counseling perspective and recovery, we actually really factor that in. And that's a different consideration when somebody has truly been born and it's all they've known and been raised in. And so I thank you for that piece, because I think we all want to kind of talk about the positive things and that life is well, but I think almost everybody, I bet to some extent, can relate to feeling like something's not okay inside, and yet everyone on the outside recognizes that you're doing just fine. But really, like, it's such an internal experience of layers of teachings that one took in to have beliefs about the world and who we are and how we live. I mean, those are fundamental elements to our existence.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And when I had left the group and I was functioning and, having the jobs, having the relationships, things like that, I always felt like something was wrong with me, that I was weak, that I was different. I never wanted to tell people that I was a part of this group or what had, I would just kind of say that I was part of a religious church. My church was religious, is what I would probably say. My church was extra religious, but I didn't really face the truth of it being a high control group, a cult. Yeah. And I never really faced the truth on my own, let alone say it out loud. But I didn't really face how there's so much to it. There is so much to it. And now my life consists of me working through it and processing everything, all of my trauma. Just the idea of me thinking the thoughts of that I feel different and I feel weak. I have to examine that.
Yes.
Well, what is actually weak about me? There's nothing weak about me. I got out of this group. I'm strong, but just a thought like that. So now what I do to work through everything and process things now, process the trauma, is I really try to become aware of my thoughts, my fears, my pain. What are my thoughts really even saying? I mean, sometimes they're just so full of shame and fear. And they've been hardwired. They've been hardwired into my brain, hardwired. So it takes time to process it and work through it. And that's what basically my life consists of now, is really, every single day. It's hard work. I don't want to make it sound so negative, and I don't want to, but it hasn't been easy for me.
Yeah. It
hasn't been easy for me. It's not, some moments are, it's all beautiful. Okay. It's all beautiful. Some moments are, really being able to relax and enjoy a moment. And that moment is like so nice that the pressure is off of me to be perfect or to feel negative, or the stress has been lifted a little bit, and I can feel like a really relaxing moment of peace and calm, and allow myself to feel that and really, feel those feelings. But those are kind of rare. I'm sure over time and working through these things, I'll have more fun, more breakthroughs, more good moments of peace and calm. And I've had more and more moments of those, but there is just still so much heavy duty wiring and programming that I'm working through.
Yeah.
And right now what I've been working through is just a lot of, fear, and a lot of, I was discussing with you before, it's hard for me to make decisions. It's hard for me to get clear about making decisions sometimes because every decision was made for me in this group.
Yeah.
But I've been really putting my self-care first in my life. And that's something that is just, I was really taught in this group to do, and not really relax, not really enjoy life.
Yeah.
And working through those beliefs and putting my self-care first, as in learning how to relax. I mean, it's just so hard. Learning how to just take care of myself, just basic, simple stuff, learn how to be proud of myself. I try to remind myself to just celebrate every little tiny sip of water, to just be extra gentle and comforting to myself.
Yeah.
Learning how to do that, and that it's okay. I was taught growing up in this group that to care for myself is selfishness and it's a sin. And that Jesus would be angry at me and hate me and turn his back on me, and I would go to hell for something like that. So now, undoing those patterns, it hasn't been an easy process, but it is a process. It's a journey, but it's just been basically life-changing for me because I've realized that there's another way I can live, and it doesn't have to be in survival mode anymore. It doesn't have to be where I'm taking abuse.
Yeah.
I was susceptible to these abusive relationships after I left this group.
Yeah.
I was susceptible to, being like emotionally, mentally, physically abused, and people putting, like one partner, put a lot of pressure on me to rush into getting engaged and rushing into getting married and rushing into getting pregnant and rushing into things. And it's like I didn't know I had these rights.
Yeah. Yes.
Working through just that itself, that I have the right to make my own decisions. I have the right to care about how I feel, to listen to my own voice and to hear what my own voice has to say, to listen to my own feelings and my own thoughts, and decide to believe something different, to decide to believe new beliefs, that my feelings are important and that they're not wrong, that my thoughts, and feelings, that I can take a look at them and I can decide and choose for myself.
Yeah.
What I want to think about them,
Yes. And
that is that whatever conclusion I come to is not wrong. It's actually it's just A-okay. It's fine.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting, Naomi. For myself, I've also like that incredible feeling of freedom that comes from making our own decisions. I've also translated that for myself into making my own mistakes. Like, at least if I'm making mistakes, I'm the one making them and someone's not making them for me, So even if it's a mistake, at least I made it and can own it and be the one who owned that, versus feeling shame for something that you did that you didn't even choose to do.
That's true. And if you do make a mistake, it's like, I don't have to be hard on myself. I can choose not to be hard on myself. I can choose to say, you know what, I can be positive about it and say mistakes are important for me to learn about myself, for me to learn what kind of figure out what kind of life I want, what kind of decisions I want to make in the future. It's, trial and error is a good thing. And I think it was just ingrained into me that if I make any mistakes, any sort of tiny, tiny little perceived mistake, I mean, it's just, I had so much pressure of the wrath of God will be upon me, so just very paranoid about making one little small mistake. And now knowing that, like being free from that, realizing there is no wrong. If I make a wrong choice, quote unquote, then everything that I can learn from it. And it's a good thing.
Yeah. Right.
That's a beautiful realization. I've had so many beautiful, freeing realizations, but it's in the midst of the pain. It's in the midst of, it's in the middle of the pain and the fear and the working through the mud. It's not just moving on and having fun. And it's just not that. It hasn't been that simple for me.
Yeah. And thank you. Like, I also really appreciate that you're sharing that, because I think really, no one wants to be in pain, right? So we do tend to shy away from it. But like that process that you describe of just like freaking diving into the mud, it's like really, I feel like we have to go into the mud in order to then be free. And so I just appreciate that you shared that and described that process in that way that's like not pretty. You come out with gunk all over. And in the midst of it, it's not fun. And there might be real beauty.
It really is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And there's so, like I said, there's been so many beautiful realizations and letting go of processing something, let's just say processing the thought of I'm weaker than everyone, processing that's just one example of many, 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 many thoughts and feelings. But just one, realizing that I'm not weak, actually, and processing that and getting to the bottom of this thought and changing it. It's so freeing. It's so beautiful. But it takes me being aware of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And that sometimes can be absolutely excruciating, especially at first, when I first decided to do this, I would say pull the Band-Aid off, but it was way bigger than a Band-Aid. But you can get the picture here.
I see like the Mummy.
Off. I don't know. Yeah,
right. The Mummy, where it's just like layers and layers of the tape on the body.
And underneath it is like broken bones and third-degree burns. And, it's bad, especially after the years and years and years of trying to cover up and numb out and live unaware of what was going on inside of me and avoiding it and just numbing out in every way I can. I wasn't a drug addict, but I did a whole bunch of other things to numb out. I had all kinds of, distractions. Some were just normal stuff, just watching TV, or just normal stuff. But they were, I would consider that a lot of it addictions, because it was in an effort. I didn't know this was all subconscious, but it was in an effort to make myself feel better, because I was numbing out, because I didn't want to do this. Was too scared to do this. And I wasn't in that place yet where I was ready. I didn't have the strength. I feel like my children are miracles, because I don't know if I would have ever done it for me.
Yeah.
But I did it for them, because if I was going to bring children into the world, I did not want to traumatize them the way that I have gone through trauma, my own childhood trauma. I didn't want to bring more traumatized children into this world. And of course, they probably will have trauma no matter what, because I personally feel that, like how I was saying that I've been processing my thoughts, one at a time. Well, one of them is that I felt so different than everyone else. I always felt like a black sheep, like in a group of people that have maybe nice big families. I always felt like there's something wrong with me and I'm different. Yeah. Well, now I feel, the more and more I work through my trauma, I realize we're all the same.
Right.
We all have trauma. We all have pain. We all have something.
Yes.
Some scar, something happened,
Yes.
And it's different for, of course, every single person, but I'm no different than anyone else, even though I had this extreme story here.
Yeah.
My trauma is the same as everyone else's trauma. Me feeling that I'm weaker than someone else. I mean, how many people have that thought?
Exactly.
So many,
yeah.
So me working through these things has made me feel like it's made me find this compassion and acceptance for people and see people in a different way and not judge people anymore. And also realizing how much this group judged others and judged ourselves so harshly. We were so hard on ourselves and so hard on each other and so hard on people outside of this group and judging and labeling everything and everyone. And now it's just, I've let go of so much of that. And it's just and I will say that is a painful, vulnerable place to be in, to feel tons of love for people that might be living with such extreme pain and trauma that they lash out at you or they react at you and all those kind of things. It's a very, it hurts to be in a vulnerable place to actually feel compassion in that moment, and understanding and acceptance and connection.
Yeah.
To find that connection with people.
Yes. Yep.
To realize your connection with people. Yeah. With everyone. And that's just one of the things that I've basically fallen upon with this healing process,
So beautiful. And I do
learning how to be easier on myself and gentle on myself and others,
Yes.
Sorry, yes. I interrupted you.
No, no, I'm glad you finished that thought. I mean, once again, I was just going to say, the way that you actually describe that is so beautiful, because I think this is also a nuance that often people don't see until they're out, which is that this whole judging thing, right? Because the groups typically will create an us and them thing. But it's so interesting because I've spoken to a lot of people who have had an experience that I would say is how I would describe mine, which is that when I was in it, I didn't really realize that that's what we were doing. When you've got the spiritual teachings as the foundation by which manipulation's happening, this is one of those areas where you really think that you've got something amazing and you want everybody else to come and be free in what you've got. And then we alienate and abuse people by beating them over the head with that. And but it's fascinating to me. So I don't know if this is partly your experience, but I've spoken to quite a number of people. When I was in my group, I honestly, truly didn't think I was doing that. I didn't really think I was thinking negatively about people. But then to have that layer off, that was one of the big eye openers for me. That was so devastating, was kind of like, how did I allow for my mindset to close off, or the people that we ostracized, and then the fact that, that we let that happen. And that was one area for me where, like, in the deep, deep parts, I did feel like that was wrong, and just kind of, it was one of those things that for whatever reasons, there were reasons that I didn't say anything, because we have repercussions or whatever it is. But yeah, so I really just love the way that you described that. And yeah, and I think also...
as you were talking about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really interesting too, how there can exist seemingly so much love with others in community. And then also people are typically like tattling on each other and monitoring each other, but because it's essentially for the other's good, you don't really see it as manipulative and abusive. But that also, like, just feeling you tear up a little bit around community really just brought me into that, that they're also just the realness of what can happen there as well. Amidst all of this craziness, there actually is real connection and real love at times,
Yes. That's one of the things that I was going to say is that, when I was in the group, of course, we didn't think we were judging people at all. I mean, we thought we had an intense love for people, an overwhelming, we were very passionate people with just, we thought that love was like really the driving force behind everything. And we really thought that. We thought that the love of God was this driving force of everything. So the way that we, maybe the way that I was corrected by an adult or a leader or interrogated or called out or something, then their belief was that was out of love, to tell me the truth, to save me, to protect me, to help me, to get me on the right track, to get me on the right path, to help my relationship with Jesus, to save me, all these different things. They thought that tough love on somebody was love. They really, truly, with every fiber of their being, believed that. And they were very loving people in a way that they desired for this person, for each other to be saved, to go to heaven, and to be welcomed by God, welcomed by Jesus. And if Jesus came back at any given moment, they just want to make sure that they're in the right place to be forgiven and accepted by Jesus. So that was their belief. They thought this was all out of love. Even somebody questioning the church or being exiled out of the church, it was tough love. Well, if we do this, this is, how we can show them. This is somehow so twisted to think that. But what I was going to tell you before is that the fundamental belief of the idea of, if you believe in Jesus, or if you say this prayer, if you act right, if you do all these things, if you're a Christian, you get to go to heaven and everyone else doesn't.
Yeah.
It makes you really afraid for the people around you. Yeah. It makes you afraid for yourself and all the people around you. I want to ensure that my children get to heaven. I want to ensure that my neighbor gets to heaven. I don't want them to burn for eternity. I don't want Jesus to hate them. I don't want him to, right. I don't want them to be judged, so it just kind of pits you against everyone in a way where it's just, you're constantly judging where someone else is in their spiritual journey, in their relation. I can't tell you how many times in that church, someone asked me, how's your relationship with Jesus going? And I had to answer that. They wanted to know, they wanted to pry, because it was coming from a place of fear of that I would go to hell, or so it was kind of coming from a place of love. So it's very complicated.
Yeah.
They weren't just trying to judge and control others. It was coming from a real place of care and concern.
Yeah.
Because of their beliefs.
Right. It's amazing that, it's like within that dynamic, it all makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like these are the things that we were taught. These were the things that we believed. So I can't blame them. I can't hold them responsible. Because if you believe those things, then, you're doing the best you can and you think you're doing the right thing. Like all the different ways that I was punished. And, that was coming out of a place of care. It's hard to wrap your mind around that. And it's hard to get to a place where you accept that and you believe that and you process all of the crap to get to that place to where you can honestly say that and feel that way. Yeah. You have to go through, we were talking about this earlier. You have to go through the anger and you have to go through all of it. You have to allow yourself I've had to allow myself to feel all the feelings and none of them are wrong. They're just telling me what needs comfort, what needs care,
Yeah, it's like in the unfettered emotions and letting all those feelings have a voice, we get to actually see what its purpose is. And that's where sort of the gems of healing live,
Yes.
Yeah. It is amazing that you really chose to take that deep dive. And one of the things that strikes me is this catalyst of the kids, being this shift of really wanting personal change. And I wonder if, I know you and I spoke a tiny bit about like an inner child moment with one of your kids, but I wondered if, so it is very common that in religious recovery work and cult recovery work, we do a lot of inner child work. And so it struck me that you had mentioned that, and I know we didn't go into it at all, but I wondered if also there was just, I was thinking about doing inner child work and having a child, and just, has that mattered? Has that been kind of a connected part of your healing experience, is like having this little sort of these little innocent beings around as you're personally, tending to yourself?
That is literally what my life is now. Is, my children are, it's so funny because my children are my spiritual teachers. They're my spiritual masters at this point, because, it was growing up, it was just the children were so demonized and the children weren't heard. The children weren't allowed to be, I wasn't allowed, speak for myself. I wasn't allowed to really be myself and be accepted for who I am, and all my little needs and desires and wishes and dreams and personality and interests, they weren't honored. They weren't cared for. And now doing that for my kids and really being aware. So that's how I live now, is I'm very mindful all day, every day when I'm with my kids. Now, I say that, but I'm not 100% great at being mindful. Okay. I'm practicing it. It's a practice. It's a process. It's not just overnight, I'm always giving my 100% at this, Yeah. But it's one of those things I'm constantly trying to remind myself that to speak to myself, to heal myself as I'm playing with them, as I'm spending time with them, as I'm being present with them, as I'm looking into their eyes, as I'm listening to them and their funny things. They're funny things that they say. And I could so easily be like the people in my group. And some moments I am like the environment that I was brought up in.
Yeah.
Some moments I am just so impatient and just lash out and start in different ways, because that was completely the environment that I was raised in. Just hardly any patience and it just warmness and comfort and kindness and gentleness. There wasn't a lot of gentleness. So now if I can just, I try to just remind myself to be gentle to myself and gentle to my kids as I'm spending time with them, and trying to let go, and such a vulnerable place to let go and enjoy the moment, allow myself to enjoy the moment and to feel love. It's such a vulnerable, hard thing to do sometimes. Yeah. But when I do have moments where I'm succeeding, I try to hold on to that feeling as long as possible. Mm. But what you were talking about before with the inner child work, I'm constantly thinking about her, the little girl, myself as a child. I'm constantly thinking about her when I'm with my kids. Yeah. I don't want to harm these kids, and I don't, and I think about the ways that I would be harmed if I lashed out, if someone lashed out at me, how that felt for me, Yeah. So I have to sometimes go, apologize to my kids. Yeah. And let them know this is how I was raised, and I don't want to be like that. Yeah.
Yep. I'm sure lots of parents are relating to you right now, whether they've had our experience or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think the generation of, our parents, they were just very strict and just didn't really pay tons of attention to the kids. The kids were just kind of of course they loved the kids. They wanted the best for the kids, but they weren't just super present and engaged and patient. Do you know what I mean? I think that they were caught up in their own issues, their own problems, their own social status and things,
It's always interesting, I think, how different generations kind of tend to have a different vibe about how they parent, and I agree. I think sort of that generation of parenting was a little more rule oriented, and you have patterns and you have rules that you abide by, and you do this at this time and this at this time, and you wear pants to this and a dress to this. And, things were just a little more dictated.
Yeah. And for me in this group, we had such a focus on perfectionism. Yeah. Everything had to be perfect and clean and tidy, and just, it's hard to not go there with my kids, but then it's that opportunity to give comfort to myself too. Yes. And to reevaluate, how do I want to do this? How do I want to, it's okay for it to be important to me that I want our house to be tidy, but how can I be gentle about it? How can I, say it in a gentle way? And, it's okay. These feelings are okay that I want certain things, like I want my children to behave in public and things like that. But instead of just, pulling on them and yelling at them and, how can I, and by being gentle to them, this is what I was going to tell you earlier. I kind of lost my train of thought for just a second, but, as I'm learning how to be gentle to them, this is how they're my spiritual teachers. How I'm learning, how I'm learning while I'm learning to be gentle to them, that is how I'm also learning to let go and be gentle to myself. You know what I mean? Like how I'm able to, even through being gentle with my husband, being patient with my husband, which is a whole other.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's helping me heal as well, learning how to be gentle to myself too, because I think that maybe the way that I'm treating others is the way maybe I'm treating myself. Maybe I'm hard on others because I'm still hard on myself because it was just so ingrained into me to do that.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. What's really striking me about what you just shared is that there's really kind of a difference between knowing that we should be gentle with ourselves and having those moments of going like, oh, I should be gentle with myself. It's like messages, or teachings or lessons or whatever it is. It's like they seep into us, I think, on different levels sometimes. And what's really striking me about sort of seeing you in this scene with your children where there's really visibly a live little person there, it's sort of like the tangibility of that experience of really this, these kids that just like, when they have a moment and they're crying and they just need you. It is a very different depth in which to kind of process what that's like when you're holding that kid and you feel their little heart beating and their little breath is faster than ours and all of that, and you're really feeling them. It's so easy to feel the tenderness and the love for that child. And so it's striking me to kind of have that tangible experience and to really go like, I need to have it be that kind of tangibility inside of me. Like, it's not just a moment of going like, oh, I had this negative thought. Oh, okay. Be kind to myself. Think a different thought. It's like actually taking it into one's heart and really going like, oh, like, I'm sorry. Like, can I give you this gift instead? I'm just feeling kind of the layer. I don't know. Did that make sense of the kind of the different depth when you've got the little kid right there, the real life?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And what you were just saying before about the thoughts, I used to try to get thoughts out of my head, like thinking that some thoughts were wrong.
Yeah.
And so, don't think that thought, don't think that thought. And I was taught that, sometimes the devil would put thoughts into our head.
Yeah.
And, the devil was always after us in some way and always putting thoughts in our head. And there was always an enemy and there was always a war. And these thoughts are a war that I have to fight against and get out of here and, resist. And now I really try to allow the thoughts. And if it's like if I can be aware of it, I like to try to process it all the way. Why do I think that? Where is that coming from? Is it true? Is that really what I honestly believe and why,
Yes.
And yeah, for sure. But going back to the parenting thing, learning how to have patience with my children when sometimes I'm feeling triggered and feeling stressed, and learning how to work through that moment and be gentle to them. It's not easy sometimes. Yeah. It's not always a walk in the park. But as I choose to do it, to do the work, I want to become more and more aware of like how I affect them.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, every day I think about the day and how I affected. This is something I kind of learned in the 12-step program. I think about the different events throughout the day. How did I react? How did I respond to things? Does that make me feel good? Is that who I really want to be? I don't really want to be that way.
Yeah.
I want to try to make it right and do it something different next time.
Yeah.
I don't want it to react that way so quickly.
Yeah.
I want to try to slow down. So now I try to slow everything down. I try to like deep breathe and breathe deep and just focus on that and focus on, but with these kids, tugging at you and tugging at me and, fighting with each other and pulling each other's hair and, making a mess, dropping all the Cheerios, it's just, it's a stressful, busy time. And that's okay that it is a stressful, busy time. I just try to be like totally gentle with myself. I don't put too much pressure on myself anymore. I don't sign up for too many things. I keep it very, very simple. I try to just not have too high expectations on myself.
Yeah.
And I try to just have those moments of looking around and seeing my house completely blown up with like just laundry everywhere. And I just try to think, oh, how beautiful is this? Because I have this little family and I have these little babies and they're growing so fast. And this is just a beautiful life. And I'm so thankful to be alive. I'm so thankful to be able to experience it. I'm so thankful to be, to have this. And I try to, focus on that. But, like I said, sometimes some moments are harder than others.
Yeah. Right. Of course. And especially in the parenting world, it's like all the parents are listening right now. Like, oh my God,
it's hard to process your trauma while being a parent.
Yeah.
But I think these children are the way that by including them in everything we're doing, like I said, it's easier said than done. But instead of being like, get out of the kitchen, it's hot in here, it's, not safe in here, instead of like, it's like, okay, well, what can we do together while mommy's cooking? And I try to make things very simple for myself and use the crock pot a lot. The crock pot is my best friend, but even when I'm actually cooking a dinner or doing something like that, it's like, how can I include him? Can he help me in some way?
Yeah.
He wants to be with me. He wants to spend time with me. I don't want to just be like, get back over there. That's how the environment was that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that way.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly working through those things, but it's a bit by bit.
Yeah.
I can't just change overnight. I can't just change everything I was taught
right
in an instant,
And that's so why the tenderness and compassion on oneself has to exist in these processes, because it's not a quick change.
And celebrate every win. Every single little tiny win. I mean, every time I take a sip of water, I'm proud of myself. I wasn't taught to really listen to my body or really take care of my body. That really wasn't like a big deal in this group. The bigger deal was the sin thing.
Yeah.
Are you in sin or not in sin? It wasn't, I wasn't really in touch with my body and how my body was feeling and taking good care of myself. And I really wasn't taught that stuff.
Yeah.
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 So I celebrate every little thing now. Like I try to remember to.
Yeah.
Every sip of water, every vegetable, every time I move my body in any way,
yeah.
every time I step outside, I'm just so proud of myself because look at everything that I've survived, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I also feel moved to just mention, because you had mentioned it to me, and I wonder, it could be one of those little nuggets that, like, even if just one person hears and decides that this resonates and they adopt it, that it could be life-changing. That I know you mentioned also that you had done some minimalism research or work, and my husband just recently has actually gotten very into a few minimalist kind of philosophers and that whole way. And so he's been talking about it a lot, and it's been really fascinating. I hadn't quite thought about it in this context. And so I love that you brought it up. And so I wondered if you could say maybe a little bit about that and sort of how that's affected your experience of life.
Yeah, I don't even know when, but it was years ago, but I stumbled across minimalism. So I guess I would label my family like a minimalist family. I'm a minimalist mom, minimalist. And minimalism has actually, it started out where I was just kind of trying to declutter and get rid of crap that I didn't use and things like that. And, you know, the constant cleaning was stressing me out. You know, I kind of felt constantly like stressed out about the amount of time that I was taking on cleaning. And I didn't feel like I just didn't feel like really relaxed in my space. And with minimalism, I've basically, you know, we downsized, or we let go of at least 80 to 85% of our belongings.
Wow.
Yes. And the way that I did it was, and this is something that I kind of learned from Marie Kondo, the KonMari method in her book, from her book, is I really was able to it actually started helping me to have a deeper healing from trauma, because it helped me get in touch with my feelings. It was like it was helped me get like an elementary lesson for me, like on how to get connected to your feelings. Cause I was so disconnected from them.
Yeah.
I had no idea how my body felt or how like my emotions felt. I didn't look at it. I didn't listen at all. I was so disconnected from it. So I was just like, go, 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 and just survival mode. And just like, a lot of my life was just always like centered around drama. Yeah. Because that was just how I was raised. It was just, my life was just constantly there was always some sort of big drama going on. So I was just constantly focused on some sort of drama instead of like focusing inward, you know, and my body and my health. And anyway, so this kind of helped me get connected to that, because it was just like, you know, with the KonMari method, you go through each item that you own and you ask yourself how you feel about it throughout the day. Like if I just open my cupboards or open a drawer or open my fridge or anything, I just like am really aware of how something makes me feel. And if I ever think the thought, like, I don't want to wear that shirt because I don't like that one, or if I don't ever want to, it's like, it got me connected to my thoughts too. Like listen to my thoughts. If I am looking for a article of clothing and I'm like, oh, that one's not my favorite. I don't want to wear that one. That's when I know that one's not my favorite and I'm letting it go, you know? So it's kind of helped me get connected to my thoughts and my feelings. And then it really kind of introduced me to mindfulness. Yeah. Because it helped me to really slow down and just be more aware of my thoughts and feelings and take it very slow. So I've really simplified my life in so many ways. Like I said before, I don't sign up for a lot of stuff. I don't sign up for a lot of stuff. I keep my life very simple because my self-care comes first. I have a lot of boundaries. I have very strict boundaries with people. I have to have my own space, and I have to have a lot of space because I'm recovering from something so big.
Yeah.
You know, I have to have a lot of quiet time. I have to have my space is not always clutter free, and it's not always like clean and everything because I have kids. And I don't put a lot of pressure on myself, but because we don't own a lot, it doesn't get out of control anymore. It doesn't feel chaotic. Yeah. It just kind of feels like to me, it always looks beautiful. It always feels beautiful. It always feels, my space feels so comforting and safe and warm now because I only own my very, very top favorite stuff.
Yeah.
How cool. Yeah.
So because you were talking also just about kind of the way that you've structured your life, I wonder if you would also share with us a bit, brought my thoughts to the podcast and taking that on. And I know you've mentioned that certainly was kind of a part of like staring everything in the face and going, okay, I'm ready to do this. But would you mind speaking a little more to what that was like for you? Just having had my own experience, I'm aware that there's always inevitably some unexpected things that come from, this type of creative endeavor. And so I'm wondering if you could speak about it kind of for yourself, and then also if there have been what it's been like for you to reconnect with the people that were in season 1 who were a part of your group and on your podcast, and just kind of anything around that. Like, I'm also just wondering what it's been like to actually connect with people in the group. My sense was that the individuals that are featured there are maybe a little older. Like, most of them seemed like maybe they were more of your parents' gen versus your generation. And I wondered kind of what your experience has been also maybe connecting with people in your generation, and just just your experience around all that.
When I decided to face everything head on and really face the truth, and also get to the bottom of the truth, because and I'm still getting to the bottom of the truth of this group, because there are still details that I know I was not able to uncover everything in season 1. There's more, and I know there's more. My gut instinct tells me that there's more to this group. And I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more abuse that people are not willing or able to share yet. And I think I want the full truth to be known. All of it.
Cool.
I think we all deserve that. I deserve that. I want to know what I was a part of here, and I only have one story, my experience, but I wanted to connect with people and to find out their experience, because we were so isolated in this group. We weren't allowed, we weren't able to share our experiences with each other. Yeah. So I didn't know if anybody had ever been to England. I had never known. I just didn't know, and I just wanted validation, and I wanted it for my own healing.
Yeah.
To find out, why am I the way that I am? I want to know more. I want to be able to connect the dots and process everything. And I have to have all of the information to do that.
Yeah.
So I connected, I called or contacted almost anyone I could think of from that group.
Yeah.
And I started saying that I want to do something, and something creative, and I want I want to know the truth. I want the truth to come out. And a lot of people just weren't the contributors from season 1 were the only willing people, the only willing people in this entire group.
How interesting. And do you have a sense of kind of what the numbers were in both Connecticut and England at the time that it was, thriving?
The churches were, I'm honestly just guessing, but I'm going to guess that there were a few hundred people in Connecticut, and then there was a few hundred people in the second church in England.
Yeah.
So out of the hundreds of people, these were the only people that were willing to do the season 1 that I spoke with.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, their description of the experience, again, because it's slightly different than yours, where these are individuals who kind of were that first gen who chose to be involved. And, the stories are so similar where kind of, initially it's really beautiful and lovely and wonderful, and then things start to change. And then, I mean, some of what is contained in these stories are just heartbreaking. I mean, especially the division from families and the breakup of families with lies. So children are being raised thinking that their mother was having sexually inappropriate thoughts about them when she was basically coerced into admitting that. I mean, it's so far out,
The drama of this group was just wild stuff. Just wild stuff. They were very focused on lust and who's wanting to lust after this person, who's lusting after that person, who's, everyone was like a potential child molester in this group, And
I love what you share, because in your story, you have that moment that you share. I think it was one of the leadership men, the men who was kind of in a leadership role in that group, if I remember this correctly, you'll correct me, where you were in his car and driving around town, and he was talking to you about lust.
Yeah. This was a common theme, a common thing that happened, where young people were interrogated and questioned and accused, very young children.
Well, you didn't even know what the word meant, right?
I didn't know what the word meant. I had no idea. But he told me I was lusting. I had lust in my heart. And he drove me around, and I was in the back seat. And we didn't have we couldn't question anything, and we couldn't say no.
Yeah.
The punishment was far too severe for that.
Yeah.
So you just have to say yes. And I'm sure that there were far more severe things like that going on in this group, but yeah, I think it's important to say that this group destroyed people's lives. They destroyed people, their mental health. It destroyed families. It tore families apart. It separated families. It pit family members against each other. And even the families that survived, a lot of them haven't been able to really recover from the aftermath or find some sort of normalcy as a family, or be able to heal together. I don't know if there's any family that has been able to do that, like fully leave and fully. Well, yeah, maybe there's been some, maybe.
And may I ask, because I just realized that this is like a piece of information we don't know, what actually happened to the group? And did how long was your mom in it beyond? I mean, is it still functioning in some way?
This is a tough one. So basically, This is my perspective of that. Because I know that's what everybody wants to know, you know, and I kind of want to know too. You know, it's just one of those things where here's the situation. You know, it's had so many name changes. Yeah. It's had so many name changes. And at one point, the leaders stepped down. Oh. And there was a new leader from the group that kind of arose. And so he is now the minister, the lead pastor minister of the church. And the name has changed again, and it has moved to a new building. It's still in Norwich, Connecticut. From what my mother still attends, I believe, and a lot of the members from King's Chapel still attend. So there's still a lot of the same church family there. Mm-hmm. And the person that's the lead pastor now is somebody that I grew up with. And he was a little older than me. He was like in the youth group of, you know, older than me. And, you know, I always liked him. I've always liked him. He's always been like down to earth and kind to me. But for me, it's hard for me to accept that this group is even around at all. I've been told that it's changed. I've been told that it's different. I had a conversation with, his name's Adam Bowles. I've had a conversation with Adam, a long conversation, because I was really concerned as my relationship with my mother was growing. I was concerned that she was still a part of it. And it was actually like really triggering me that she's still going to church every Sunday in the same group, you know? So I wanted to have a long conversation with him. And, you know, the conversation went well, but you know, I don't go to this church. I'm not a member. I haven't visited it. I don't know the inner workings of it. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. It's hard for me to accept that. I don't think anyone, like, this is just literally my opinion. I don't feel that anyone has the right or place to like keep this thing going in any way, shape, or form. And it should just be like completely dismantled and destroyed. And that's just my personal opinion. Yeah. You know, not saying anything against anyone or that this place is still the same way that it was. You know, I have no right to judge that. I don't have any right to say that because I don't know. But it's just one of those things where I just don't know it's one of those opinions that I have. It was just like, does anyone that grew up in this group really have a right to lead a group of people, you know, with the way that we were raised? I don't know. I mean, but then that's, you know, kind of saying that I don't have the capacity to, you know, be a leader. And that's not true, you know?
Well, I wonder if part of the distinction there that you're getting to is, this is kind of where I've netted out with that. Unless you have been able to call what happened bad in some way, shape, or form, like unless you are clear about what went down and what those dynamics were that we were in my group, you then have maybe a different understanding than a lot of other people of what makes a healthy group versus an unhealthy group. So in some ways, I think it can work, right? Like even for me in the work that I do, I know that part of my reason that I am so client-centered, meaning I want every client that I'm with to feel empowered in the work that we're doing. Ask them permission all the time. Can I actually do this with you? Would you like to do this? You know, it's truly their choice and very much guided by them and their process. And I know that's a result of having been in an experience where somebody with power abuses it and can guide you in a direction where you may not otherwise have gone. And since I have also had some very interesting conversations with people in my group who have gone on to be leading spiritual organizations in some shape or form. And I think honestly that a lot of, the people that I've communicated with at least feel very aware of these dynamics and really not wanting to participate in them. So I think there's hope around that. Right. But I think it's exactly what you and I were talking about earlier. I think if you haven't really seen clearly what happened, then you might encounter trouble there,
I agree. And my concern with that is, it's one thing to say that the group was bad or wrong or did things that were manipulative or this thing was wrong. I think I feel that we would have to, as a group, come to terms with every single thing.
Yeah.
Leave nothing out and examine why every single thing, the interrogations, just the whole idea of someone else saying that they know God's will for someone else and speaking for God. Like, this is what God is saying to you. This is how God feels about you. This is what he's saying right now. That was a very big thing in that group. And I don't know if they honestly see every single part of the manipulation. And that is what concerns me about this group morphing into something else, something new. Even if they feel that it's better and more healthy, to me, my concern is that if you don't get to the absolute root of every single thing that was harmful and traumatizing, then you cannot avoid something harmful or traumatizing to happen to someone else, another child born into this group.
Yeah.
You'd have to get to every single detail and make sure that every precaution has been made for this to never even look like this. There's so much there. There's so much manipulation and wrong things that happened in there. And that could literally appear kind of normal to like a normal church potentially, or to, that could appear healthy and normal, that I think have to just be looked at with a magnifying glass in order for this group to continue. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
But that's, my concern.
Yep.
I've told my mom, I'm just concern. I've tried to ask her, why don't you just take a break? That would be great, is if everyone could just take a break. Don't go to church for 2 years, then come back, and allow yourself to just be alone with your thoughts and your feelings. God's not going anywhere, he's with you still. So you got this. You don't need a church group in order to survive, Yeah. I think that would be really great. But my mom has told me that, like I said, things are different, where if she misses a church service, sometimes she does. I don't know. I don't know what it's like.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Well, again, I really appreciate you sharing that whole component, because I think others can actually relate to that. This is something that kind of happens. It's like the organizations morph and they change names and leadership changes. And it's a very interesting consideration.
Thank you so much for all of your input, for having me on here. It means a lot. It means a lot to me. And I'm so glad we've connected.
Me too. Me too, Naomi. Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure getting to know you and also having you here and your story. I really, once again, I feel like the level of kind of vulnerability and insight that you allowed us into in your own personal process is really like such a gift for people, because we're all sorting through in all of these different ways how to heal, how to live,
Absolutely.
thrive, and heal.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with you again sometime.
Me too. Me too. In preparation for this outro, I was considering some of the things that Naomi had mentioned when she was speaking about batting away thoughts and no longer doing that, really learning to have patience with her children, with herself, just being gentle with herself in lots of different ways and not setting expectations too high. And also just how important it was also for her to not need to process things really quickly, to celebrate every win. And so these practices that Naomi mentioned are really supportive of fostering self-compassion. And since our interview was so much about healing, I felt inspired to speak a little bit about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and also self-compassion. So some of you have heard me say previously that I don't love medical labels, but sometimes for the purpose of uniting everyone regarding understanding sets of symptoms, it can be helpful. I understand that. So I want to speak a little to PTSD because this is the medical diagnosis most commonly given to the trauma that's experienced by those who have left a group of high control, high demand. And I wanted to address this because so many people with a diagnosis of PTSD really do struggle with self-compassion. And the symptoms of PTSD can be very intense and can disrupt many areas of a person's life. So as a result, people with PTSD may start to experience feelings of guilt or shame and have negative thoughts about themselves or feel worthless, have feelings of failing, and a lack of self-compassion can have a huge impact on recovery from PTSD. So this is obviously because a lack of self-compassion often will decrease our motivation of all different sorts, and I'm sure many people can relate to that. It may increase feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, and it's easy to then get caught in a cycle that generates strong feelings of shame and guilt, which can make emotions even more difficult to manage. So we hope that self-compassion can also prevent what people typically end up experiencing down the road, which are more kind of self-destructive behaviors. But also self-compassion can at times be really difficult to harness. So I thought I'd provide a few suggestions that people can feel into regarding what might be right for them. And just a disclaimer that this is not treatment advice and doesn't replace working with a professional. But perhaps one or some of these suggestions might resonate for some of you listening or might pique your curiosity to further explore. And in light of that, I wanted to share some strategies for fostering a stronger sense of self-compassion, knowing that not all of these suggestions will be right for everyone. So the first is recognizing that you're human. And oftentimes people set really high expectations that actually cannot even be met. For example, sometimes a person with PTSD may have in their mind a timeline for when symptoms should be eliminated through treatment. And different people just progress through treatment at different paces. And that's the case often with different variables that one is working with in treatment, that we heal around certain things before we address other things. And that's just the case in terms of the healing process, as we may also return to revisit some principles that at one point we thought we were kind of done with. So just wanting to acknowledge that it's never a linear process, really, that healing may have us revisit parts of ourselves or issues that we once thought we were kind of done with. So some people notice immediate gains, and others may take a little more time to notice benefits from healing. And setting high standards or expectations may create or increase the likelihood that we're not going to meet those expectations. And that can generate these feelings of worthlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, failure. So just simply recognizing that we're human and that there are going to be times when we struggle or slip, and that this is normal. This is normal for everyone. And actually, a positive part of the process of recovery can be these moments of struggle that help us identify areas that we need to continue to work on, and may also help us identify additional strategies that prevent similar struggles in the future. My second suggestion is to just be mindful of negative, self-focused thoughts. And that's because just this simple notion that you might have a negative thought doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. And often, our unexamined thoughts in particular are largely a result of habit. And we can't always rely on our thoughts to provide us with reality. And so any thoughts that are generating more shame and guilt can be very useful to take a look at, to just enter into a mindfulness of taking kind of a step back from our thoughts and thought patterns. In other words, that state where we're not existing feeling like we're becoming them or blending with them. Those moments when we think that we're only that thought, but rather just acknowledging or considering that the negative thought is just coming from one part of you. It's one voice amidst many, and it doesn't define you and may not even be based in reality. So while it's important to honor these parts by exploring them and giving them a voice, these kind of inner critical parts, that once they're heard and explored, they actually can take on roles that are not as vigilant as they once were. That their intensity and frequency can shift with some compassion and understanding regarding the role that they're playing as a part of your system. The third suggestion I have is this practice of self-care. So when we feel low self-compassion, we're actually at greater risk for engaging in behaviors that are or could be self-destructive or isolating. And when we're experiencing low self-compassion, one thing that can be helpful for people to do is something that represents self-care for you. This always looks different for each person. So the important thing here is that you're doing something nice and comforting for yourself. And that's not always easy, especially if it's kind of a pattern disruptor or breaker, if we're not used to doing things that are kind or comforting for ourselves. Especially in the midst of a low, it can be really hard. But sometimes it can actually be the easiest thing when and if we feel out of control in our minds or feelings, that a gesture of care can simply remind us that we're cared about and that we care about ourselves. So that's suggestion number 3. Number 4 is validating our emotions. And so another way to increase self-compassion is to really just validate emotions. That we, just knowing that we don't experience emotions randomly, our emotions are really there for a reason. And they're our body's way of communicating with us. So when we beat ourselves up for having certain emotions, all we do is increase our emotional distress. So recognizing that our emotions are important and reasonable, that they have a perspective from which they're functioning, may help to just allow them to feel more accepted. As we all know that in just listening to feelings, to other people, that alone helps people and feelings themselves experience acceptance. And this is something that we all appreciate, feeling heard. And that also can just generate compassion. And the second to last suggestion I have is considering helping others. Now, this is a delicate one. I honestly debated a little about putting it in here. It can almost seem counterintuitive. If you're feeling like there's nothing you can do to help yourself, sometimes it works for people to help others. And sometimes acting with compassion toward others can improve our own self-compassion. Sometimes it improves our mood. It provides us with a sense of accomplishment and agency. And this can bring about a sense of worth. So just be sure that in doing so, you're not overextending yourself. And also check in with yourself about where you may already be doing this. Maybe you're already caring for your children. Maybe it's picking up the phone to connect with one friend or family member. Maybe it's as big as taking the step of volunteering for an organization or a cause. And I did want to just share here that I know for myself, this would not have actually been right for me. It was something that I actually explored when I got out of my group of high control, high demand, And I just did not have the bandwidth or the capacity for that at that time. So just acknowledging that for others, because I don't want this one to put any kind of pressure on anyone. So the last suggestion, which I really love, and we did actually hear Naomi refer to this in her experience, is recognizing your accomplishments. So it's especially important to do this, especially if you are experiencing symptoms of PTSD. This can be really, really empowering for people and really helpful. And honestly, it may sound silly to some of you or little, but this is something I've found to be really actually quite powerful and sometimes actually pretty life-changing for turning things around for someone. So this is just simply making note of difficult tasks that you've accomplished, challenging situations you've successfully navigated, and really recognizing accomplishments, both big and small. We often brush aside the small accomplishments, but no accomplishment is too small, especially if you are experiencing PTSD. Really give yourself credit for showing strength and perseverance despite dealing with all that's going on for you. So the bottom line is that self-compassion is really important in PTSD recovery. And I'm hoping maybe even for some of you who are not experiencing that diagnosis, but may have found some of these suggestions helpful for something that can be at times difficult to foster. Feel free to try any of these items that I've mentioned and discover what works for you and what combination of activities and behaviors feel best to you. Allow for your progress to be slow and really acknowledge that even a small amount of self-compassion can have a tremendous impact on your mental and emotional well-being. And as always, I appreciate and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Project Hope podcast. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe and comment. You can always get in touch with me at jennifer-french.com. And please let me know any specific topics of interest. And of course, I'm always interested in your stories, whether you've left an organization of high demand, high control, or if you're an individual struggling with the knowing that someone you love is in such a situation. I am here for you. Think critically, take heart, and be free.